with Ms. Doris Ho. Doris Ho is the ABAC 2015 chair. ABAC means APEC Business Advisory Council. It's the voice of business in APEC. And we're here in Iloilo for this week because we're participating in a number of SME-related meetings. Doris will explain to you in a bit our agenda and what we're doing with the different economies of APEC to push the MSME agenda. As everyone knows, aside from being the ABAC chair for 2015, Doris is also the president and CEO of Magsaysay Incorporated. So without further ado, Doris, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Members of the press, good morning. So nice to see you. I just wanted to say before I speak about our work at ABAC is how absolutely impressed I am with Iloilo. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful. In a way, a great reflection of the people of Iloilo and your mayor, Jed, who have done so much to bring the standards up to a global level. And I guess that's what APEC is all about. It's really giving each economy of the 21 economies the ability and the capacity to actually share best practices and to be able to be part of this regional trade. And of course, tourism is one of that very big opportunities. So I just wanted to say how all the people that I've come with and all the foreigners I've been talking to, everybody has been so impressed at how beautiful the city is evolving into. So congratulations. I'm sure by now you know already what APEC's work is. So ABAC, the Business Council's work, really focuses on bringing a business voice to the goal of APEC, which is to basically have free and open trade and investment. When APEC was started 20 years ago, the leaders met in Australia, and they decided that it was important to have an agenda among leaders in the region to bring prosperity to the peoples of these various economies. The year later, they met and they established a strategy of bringing about that prosperity through the BOGOR goals of free and open trade and investment. Since that time, for the last 20 years, there has been an amazing growth of global trade within the region, and a huge number of middle class that emerged out of it. But over time, ABAC feels that these advancements are not meaningful unless we are able to ensure that the benefits of trade are also available to MSMEs. And this is why this year ABAC's theme, which happens to coincide with the Philippine government's theme, is inclusive growth. What our goal is to ensure that the policies that are being undertaken by the APEC system trickle down to MSMEs to ensure that the objectives of job creation, wealth generation, and equity, and wider access to the opportunities of global trade are realized. So in a way, if you look at it like a pyramid, the top part of the pyramid is of bigger businesses have really achieved cross-border trade. You see our malls, you see our banks, you see all the service companies, you see Starbucks everywhere. So in a way, you see Jollibees also abroad, right? So this has allowed businesses to cross borders. So what we hope to do is when you look at the pyramid, the bottom part are the greater number of people, of smaller businesses are in that bottom of the pyramid, and we hope that they actually can really also participate in trade. So our focus is on SMEs, putting a focus on MSMEs, the challenges they face, and the necessary policy reforms during this year for what the Philippines is hosting. So how do we achieve this? We have several priorities at ABAC. To give, number one is to enable more MSMEs to be part of the global value chain of bigger companies. You see this in many different industries, and we hope that we can actually encourage more businesses to also reach out to help smaller businesses learn the standards of global trade. The second leg is to bring more MSMEs into e-commerce. And we feel that this whole idea of inclusivity can really be achieved today because of technology. The word inclusiveness is not a new word. I think everybody has used this for decades. But because technology is here now with us, available to everybody, it really does allow this whole idea of inclusiveness to be available. The third leg is bringing about policies to encourage innovation. The Asia-Pacific region is projected to capture 33.4% of global e-commerce sales by the end of 2015, according to a research by eMarketer. These upward regional and global e-commerce trends present great opportunities to MSMEs to expand their market base, widen their business networks, and increase sales towards sustained growth. So we really need to leverage on internet usage, especially selling to a growing middle class that are actually requiring more convenience. So you can see a lot of urbanization taking place and more people not having time to go shopping, so they go and buy on the internet. And you can see the growth of many of these companies that offer products and services over the internet. ABAC has conducted a study with the U.S. University of Southern California Marshall School this year. And that study has cited that the single most critical limiting factor for small businesses to enter into e-commerce is the lack of readiness and capability of smaller business to engage in e-commerce. These are problems of awareness, technical ability, and maybe payment systems, delivery systems, a lot of things that have been written, and we will be releasing that report in November. For cross-border e-commerce to grow, e-payment solutions must expand beyond traditional banking solutions. Governments must allow for new, innovative e-payment solutions and avoid vested interests of incumbents. The internationalization of MSME also requires a solid vision for innovation that will allow our MSMEs to penetrate global markets and global value chains. We need an ecosystem that supports enterprise creation and increase innovation capabilities of MSMEs. Innovation for me is one of the most exciting aspects of it, and I think you see today so many disruptive industries that have emerged because of an idea. And that idea developed into using technology to make it work and to make it have a broad-based client base and basically leading to commercialization. I think all of you see this, right? You see, you've heard of Airbnb, for example. You've seen, these are what's called the sharing economy, where people are able to make their home available and have it used as a place for tourists to stay. Do they have Airbnb here in Iloilo? Have you heard of it? No? Okay, Airbnb has become one of the most successful companies in the world. It was started with an idea of somebody who said, you know, there are many young people who travel, or anybody who travels, who don't want to use a hotel. And so they basically have a system, a platform, where people can post their house, their apartment or a room. It could be a room, it could be a whole apartment, it could be a whole house. and you can choose when it can be made available for somebody to rent. So today, many people book their stay, let's say in New York City. You can go to Airbnb and get a much cheaper apartment, a whole apartment with everything, the kitchen and everything. And it allows that person who owns that apartment the ability to earn money from it. Especially, let's say they go on vacation, so they post it whenever they're on vacation. There are other types of innovations, for example, which is on the shared economy sector. For example, a company like Care.com, started by a Filipina American. Her name is Sheila Marcelo. She started this business called Care.com, basically matching people looking for caregivers and those who want to be a care seeker. So in America, they don't have extended families, so they don't have many people they can call to take care of their kids or their dog, to tutor their child, or to just provide care in general for your elderly. So in what Care.com does is it allows somebody, let's say myself, to say, okay, I'm free every afternoon from 2 to 3, I'm available. And somebody looking online will say, okay, I want somebody that's 10 minutes from me. It'll show all the list of people, my picture, all tests, all checked, and that person now, it's like a babysitting job, but it's electronically available. So a lot of these innovations open up amazing opportunities. A very young, or not necessarily young, talented person that maybe can do design can now put themselves on the internet and basically be available for anybody in the world to hire, because the market is available through the internet. So this is why we feel e-commerce and this whole idea of being able to participate in innovative ideas, this whole new growth area of innovation is very, very vital policies, not just for the APEC region, but for the Philippines, because we have many young, talented people. We must remember that MSMEs account for over 97% of all enterprises across the region and employ over half of the workforce. MSMEs contribute significantly to economic growth, with SMEs' share of GDP ranging from 20% to 50% in the majority of APEC economies. However, they only account for 35% or less of direct exports. So there's a lot of opportunity to grow. The Nanjing Declaration on promoting SME innovation development was adopted in 2014, and it urged APEC members to take a range of measures to promote SME innovation on a voluntary basis. So, for example, in the Philippines, the DTI has an organization. I don't know exactly what the structure is, but it's called Small Business Corporation. It's chaired by a man called Chuching Tambunting, who used to be the head of the Planters Development Bank. And so we're very lucky that somebody like that, who's been very involved in helping small businesses grow, is heading that. An important measure that is relevant to the innovation agenda is that of strengthening digital infrastructure. In other words, having broadband available. Because if broadband is slow, you're not going to be able to really trade on the internet. We also are pushing for leveraging the digital economy to accelerate MSMEs' participation in global value chains, as I mentioned earlier. It is important we take the commitments in APEC a step further by exploiting every available opportunity to make use of new technologies that will help MSMEs scale up internationally. And I wanted to say that one of the long-term policies that APEC and Philippines and everybody really needs to address is that this future world, this future businesses, this what they call disruptive businesses, are emerging out of technologically driven innovation. This means that our children, the new generations, must learn to see STEM that science and technology and math as key skills that everybody should love. All of you who are young, have kids, math and engineering is the way to go. So we need to sort of change the mindset of our education system, have teachers trained in math, have young kids really dream of becoming an engineer, and also eventually have really good support for universities to have research centers. So a startup company based out of a university can have access to the best engineers to help them develop these new products and services that can basically be commercialized for the whole global market. So we need continuous collaboration between the private and public sectors, and the role that all of you in media play are really important to push for these policies to be adopted by government. I just would like to say that I'm really happy that today, this afternoon actually, we will be holding a private sector roundtable to discuss these pressing issues that challenge the MSMEs. The outcome of this roundtable will be conveyed to SME ministers tomorrow when ABAC and private sector representatives meet with them in a dialogue on the sidelines of SME ministers on September 25th. So I think that ends my briefing, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
We now would like to open the floor for questions. I would request that you introduce yourself and your media organization when you would like to ask a question. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am. I am Lydia Pendon of the Manila Times, and I would like to get some explanation on these catastrophe bonds as financial instruments for SMEs.
Yes, we have, ABAC has a finance working group that has been, that actually, did you attend the SME financing? One of the, as the world has more climate change, the impact of climate change is not starting to affect many economies, and most of that is because there are many more people today, and also there's many more young people and many more people looking to live in cities. So the urbanization of all these economies are making the risks of climate change and disasters really a very major problem. So the ABAC Finance Working Group has a forum called the Asia Pacific Financial Forum, APFF, and they've come up with a list working with many financial institutions, including insurance institutions, to develop instruments to mitigate some of these risks. One of them is microinsurance that would be available to SMEs to help them bounce back. Well, I think the more important part, of course, is to build resiliency, and I think you've all heard of this new normal that's being promoted, how we build our cities, how we build our homes. So we have the microinsurance to allow SMEs to be able to put their business back and to be able to continue their business. The catastrophe bonds are another form of an instrument that hope to be made available across economies for communities to be able to help the community bounce back. So, in other words, whenever we've had disasters, we end up counting on government money, or we end up counting on aid. And I think the goal of all the work that's being done to address the issues around climate change is to build resilience so that communities and businesses can bounce back. And this is what is being discussed, and we're very happy to say that it has been adopted in the Cebu Action Plan that was presented by Cesar Purisima. And so these now has to be developed more into a whole structure across APEC.
You mean to say, ma'am, that this catastrophe bond is purely from the private sector, in no intervention from the government?
Well, bond markets are, I honestly, I don't know exactly how it's going to be structured, but bond markets actually are broadly based. In other words, bonds are issued, there will be an issuer on the bonds, and I guess probably the role of governments would be probably some guarantees, right?
As regulator?
Maybe. And then they're sold to the market either to sovereign funds or to private sector investors that buy these bonds. I have to say, though, I'm not an expert in this, so if you give me your card, I can have a better explanation of it given to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, sir. The gentleman in front.
Morning, ma'am. I'm Christian Losada from Bombo Radio, Philippines. As the chair of the APEC Business Advisory Council, how can you help the local aspiring businessman here in Western Visayas, specifically in Iloilo City or in Iloilo, wherein they lack capital, but they have available resources like raw products, especially in far-flung areas, so Jim, wherein there are a lot of aspiring businessmen who dream to become a famous businessman someday.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And I think that is really what we hope to be able to build more and more of the capacity of far-flung communities and far-flung business people that live in faraway places. We hope that we can find those ways to be able to access markets, because in the end, what it is accessing markets, right? ABAC's work and APEC's work is to really make available not just the domestic market, not just the Iloilo market, not just the Manila market, but the whole APEC market. So I think the number one thing that needs to happen is our mindset, that we really need to see that we need to be good, we need to be competitive, and we need to have a vision to be able to sell to these markets. We can start first with this closer markets to ourselves with the vision of being able to go out to other markets. As I said, one of the ways that we feel are really, really very impactful is when a bigger company helps a smaller company be part of their own supply chain. So one idea is that we're actually making a study. AIM, Asian Institute of Management, is working with us on a study on those business models. We call them inclusive business models, where bigger business look upon communities or smaller businesses to help them, because businesses cannot do everything themselves. However, the small business also needs to rise up, so they kind of meet in the middle. So you have examples of that, of companies, let's say like Nestle, that's helping coffee farmers. It's not charity, it's helping them grow coffee to the standards of Nestle, and then they can now be a supplier. Same thing, Jollibee has done this with onions, and it becomes a sustainable supply base for them. So a company to think this way has to be brave. So what I think is important is in a community, let's say in a cooperative, if that cooperative has an ambition to enter into other market, they also need to do a lot of work themselves to make themselves able to kind of reach out and to go to one of these companies and say, you know what, I'll grow your lettuce for you, or I'll grow whatever you want. everyone is longing for that supply. But it's somebody can also go forward and say, I will do that for you. And I think that already is a big step, because to go look for that farmer or to go look for that supplier is also difficult. And one of the things we've learned in all this is we always think that it's so hard for the SME to find the market. But guess what? It's also hard for the big business to find the supplier. So everybody has to kind of change their mindset and look a little bit more ambitiously to see how they can actually make that supply chain. So that's one. The second one, as I said, is e-commerce. And I'm so pleased, you know, I've been going around here, and Iloilo makes the nicest sweets. And the packaging has become so nice here. You know, they all look so delicious and so wonderful. In the olden days, it was just parang plastic bag lang, cellophane, parang durug na. And now, the packaging has become so good. So again, that kind of thing. You know, the internet has a lot of information. And one can look online and say, I need a designer to help me do my packaging, and maybe it's somebody based in Russia, I don't know. So again, it's again a mindset of looking beyond what we know and copy, you know, watch movies, look for what it is that makes it fabulous. Go to the best hotel here and see what makes it great. And that's why I love what your mayor has done, because he's really put a new vision for everybody. And trust me, this is unique, okay? It's not seen very many places in the country, so you really need to congratulate yourselves for it. So I think, I know it's hard, and there are a lot of issues that are being faced. One is payment systems. You know, how do you get paid? You don't have credit card systems. How will somebody, if somebody here is making paypay, I don't know, some kind of product, how will they receive the money? And that's some of the things we're trying to figure out. The other one is, how do you get delivery systems? Or even more fundamentally, how do they get internet access? Have you heard of Dr. Alip of CARD? Is he here in Iloilo? Anyway, he is. He was with me on the plane. And he has members in his cooperative of like 5 million members. And he was saying one of the problems is, yeah, they make all these products, but how does it get to market, right? How do you get it there? All this talent, how do you get it there? Sometimes I see the most amazing embroidery, but it's on tela that's not nice, or it's a design that nobody's gonna buy. So somebody needs to connect. So he's a connector, but he was saying the challenges they face is internet. So I was telling him, you know, I'm in shipping. We have satellite phone. So can we use that? I mean, we need to just try to jump over the barriers. I had a meeting in Manila with a Chinese ABAC member who has a platform like an Alibaba. And everybody said, oh, you know what? It's so hard here. We don't have any delivery systems. And she looked so shocked. And she said, when we started in China, we used the bicycle. And don't forget, in China, they didn't have credit cards. So they invented it. And they had no financing. So guess what? The Alibaba gives the financing over the internet. So sometimes when we have an idea, the trouble with us is we know too much. We know too much how it works in America. In China, they had nothing. So they invented something. So we almost need to be like a blank. You know, let's use a Carabao to deliver it. Kayang-kaya natin if you have the will, right?
I think the gentleman has a question.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Jaime Cabag Jr. from PIA Region 6. My question, ma'am, is that going into the fourth day of your meetings here in Iloilo, what measures so far, directions, or policy ideas and other enabling mechanisms that you are doing to build on the things that you have done in Boracay and probably siguro in Cebu that would push, no, or that would help achieve the APIC goals of putting SMEs online in the global trade, bringing them to the realm of e-commerce and innovations.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, and you're right. In Boracay, as you know, the Boracay Action Plan was approved, and then in Cebu, the Cebu Action Plan for financing, inclusive financing, was approved, and today, and 2 days tomorrow, we hope that the Iloilo, what is it going to be called?
Iloilo Action.
The Iloilo Action Initiative will be approved. And so all of them are building blocks, as you said. And what what happens now. What ABAC pushes for is for leaders to adopt policies. So for example, I was talking about innovation. That will require a whole ecosystem built. As I mentioned, it's the education, it's the broadband. So it really falls now upon us as our country to take those and to implement them here. All of you members of the press have a power to remind the leaders and to remind the candidates and to remind the mayor and to remind everybody that we want this because we want to participate. You know, one of the reasons why not much is happening on let's say, trade, export markets is because no one is pushing, right? So we need to push. We need to push our own secretaries of trade, our finance secretary, the president. We have to push that we want to be a competitive nation, and we want our people to be able to be out there selling products successfully to the world. So what happens now is that's there, but we need to do it ourselves.
Yeah. The lady at back, Amy. Maybe as she approaches the microphone, actually the round table that we're going to have with the dialogue we're having with the ministers will tackle the issue of bringing the Boracay Action Agenda into action. Yes, please.
Just to follow up on the Iloilo Action, I'm Amy Remo from Inquirer.
Hi.
Just to follow up on the Iloilo Action Initiative, categorically, of course, you're supporting this initiative.
Mhm.
And which particular, maybe, programs or measures here you're pushing for?
Do you want to answer?
Well, I've been working with the DTI upon instructions of Doris to look at specific initiatives there. I wouldn't want to preempt the announcement that will be made tomorrow, but maybe just to give you a hint, this Iloilo initiative will talk about very specific steps to, let's say, bring e-commerce into the doorsteps of MSMEs. So it's no longer just up there in the air, people talking about the need to provide access to global markets, no, through e-commerce. This initiative will tell us how this is going to happen. Again, without preempting the announcement that will be made by the ministers tomorrow, that is what we can expect in the Iloilo initiative. There will be very specific initiatives, and there's a name for these initiatives, which I'm not at liberty to share at the moment.
Just one last question, maybe about the e-commerce drive. I mean, you mentioned about how significant this will be for the MSMEs, but what kind of proposals will you be putting forward, at least on the part of for the e-commerce?
For the Philippines?
Yes.
Well, this is why I think one of the key, we have two initiatives. Actually, we have several, we have a lot of initiatives in our country. It's just that sometimes they're not all connected. For example, there's the Go Negosyo law. Bam Aquino is coming, and I'm thrilled he's coming because he really cares about this subject. Then there is the SB, I mentioned, the Small Business Corporation of the Philippines. And I'm sure there's so many other SME initiatives. I think everybody's got to get their brains together and say, okay, this is what we need for our country, right? One of them is this whole area. Well, one of them, which we hope we can achieve, is is to develop more capacity building among people, how to even go into e-commerce. It's not so easy. If you want to, even if you just want to ship something to your relative in America, you're already wondering, dadating ba ito doon, right? You're not so sure because you don't know what the rules on customs, you don't know the rules of sending things over. So one of the things that we are initiating this year is a capacity building thing on the internet so people can learn how to put their own little website. And Secretary Domingo keeps on reminding us, please be sure it explains to everybody how to get on a platform. Because I told him, you can join Alibaba, anybody can join Amazon, right? So all these things, hopefully we can put so people can learn this. So that's number one. The other one is this, in the innovation field, is the power of having university-led incubators. Do you know that actually the DOST has really a lot of funds which are being given to universities and university research labs. And these universities also have incubators. So I think one of the things that we need to do is to kind of look for best practices on how to really make these incubators really help startups and how to help make sure that the scientists and the engineers that are in these research labs have the capacity to really understand. So one of the projects we have is to do an interactive map of all incubators across the region. And we're starting with 6 economies, including the Philippines. So that means you'll have a place online where you can see where all the incubators are. You can click it, see who's being mentored in those incubators. And maybe a young person who has a great idea can go and approach that incubator and say, listen, I have an idea. So it's really building an ecosystem. It's not going to happen overnight, but all of you look so young in this room, and all of you need to be part of the development of this whole ecosystem. It's not going to happen if we don't ask for it.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, ma'am. Good morning. I'm Mads Miraflor of Manila Bulletin. My question is about where we are, where the region is right now in terms of globalizing SMEs. Are we still at the bottom end of this endeavor? And what have we achieved so far since we pushed for this goal?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I mentioned some statistics, how, these are not SMEs in the region comprise such a huge amount of, I said here, 97% of all enterprises are SMEs, and 50% of the workforce across APEC are employed by SMEs, but only 35% of trade, global trade, of trade within the region are by SMEs. So there's a long way to go still, and I think economies and governments and businesses really need to address this and help, because putting more people into trade creates a stability, it's sort of like the base. You have many people. It's like let's say you're from the Bulletin, right? Your strength comes from your thousands of subscribers. So the more people that are engaged, it is extremely important to widen that base. So when there are economic crises or one company falls down, your base is made up of many people that keep it strong. It is a challenge, though, because SMEs don't have the capacity to withstand some of the difficulties of trade. And this is one of the things that we're really studying to see how we can help put the structure in place so they can actually have a chance to be able to succeed. I'm not saying I know all the answers, but I think if we put it as a forefront of focus, this year we decided as ABAC and as the Philippine hosting year that we will really seriously put this on top of the agenda. And we're really hoping that it continues even in the Peru year.
Other questions? No more? Unless there are other questions, I'd like to thank Doris for joining this press briefing, and thank you so much as well for having us here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Really, your questions were great. Thank you. I appreciate it.